Be me late 20s. Nothing remarkable about me working as a financial analyst at a mid-tier tech company, call it Innovate Forward for convenience. I'm wired for structure, numbers lining up, systems behaving, everything adding up the way it should. The type who double-checks every figure until it feels airtight. Not because I love it, it's just how my brain operates. My routine is simple: show up, handle my workload, get paid, disappear, no ambition to play office politics or chase titles, just aiming for something steady. Maybe a modest place of my own. Eventually my job is to look at spreadsheets all day. And honestly, I'm fine with that. Numbers don't lie, they don't have emotions, they just are what they are. My company, on the other hand, is all about emotions. The office looks like someone's idea of a progressive utopia, posters on the wall with slogans like "Diversity is our strength" and "Question authority." Kind of ironic, considering our CEO, Helen, is the ultimate authority and doesn't like being questioned. Helen is a minor celebrity in the business world. She's on magazine covers, gives talks, and her whole brand is built around being a girl boss. She's the face of modern corporate feminism. Her LinkedIn is a non-stop stream of articles about shattering glass ceilings and the importance of female leadership. She talks a lot about toxic masculinity in the workplace. We have monthly all-hands meetings where she'll spend half the time talking about company performance and the other half talking about social issues. It always circles back to how Innovate Forward is leading the charge against the old patriarchal ways of doing business. Most of us just nod along. It's part of the job. The men in the office have learned to be very quiet. You say the wrong thing, even by accident, and you could be called into an HR meeting. Our head of HR is a woman named Danielle. She's Helen's right hand. The enforcer Danielle speaks entirely in corporate buzzwords. Everything is about synergy, creating safe spaces, and unpacking our unconscious biases. She can turn any conversation into a lecture on privilege. So, yeah, the vibe is a little tense. If you're a dude, you just learn to smile, agree, and focus on your work. My cubicle is next to a woman named Mary. Mary is quiet. Like me, she's in the data entry department. She's been here longer than I have. Sometimes we'll have a brief normal conversation by the water cooler, just about weekend plans or a new movie. Nothing about work politics. She seems nice, but also kind of perpetually nervous. I get the feeling she's seen a lot of people come and go. Anyway, life is fine. I'm not complaining, the pay is decent and the work is steady. A few months ago, I was tasked with doing a deep dive into our third quarter, expenditures standard procedure. Just preparing for the end-of-year audit, I'm going through invoices, cross-referencing purchase orders, the usual boring stuff. I'm in the zone, just chugging along, when I notice something odd. There are several large payments made to an outside consulting firm, a company called Aura Strategies LLC. The amounts are significant, not small change. We're talking multiple payments, each one tens of thousands of dollars. The first thing that catches my eye is that they're all round numbers: $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 in my line of work. Round numbers are a bit of a red flag. Invoices are usually for specific amounts, like $49,872.54. A perfect round number often means someone just picked a number out of thin air. I pull up the first invoice from Aura Strategies. The description of services is incredibly vague. It just says, "Leadership and Brand Synergy Consultation." What does that even mean? It's corporate word salad. I check the other invoices. Same thing, Q3 Strategic Empowerment Workshop, Executive Outreach and Vision Alignment. It's meaningless jargon, but the payments are very real. My job is to verify these things, so I start my normal process first. I check our internal vendor database. Aura Strategies LLC is listed, but the file is thin, just a contact name and an address, which is just a PO. Box, no phone number, no website listed. That's strange for a consulting firm that's supposedly good enough to command these kinds of fees. I do a quick web search for Aura Strategies LLC. Nothing. No official website, no LinkedIn profile for the company, no articles mentioning them. A ghost. This is getting weird. A firm charging six figures for vision alignment should at least have a basic website. My curiosity is officially piqued. Now this isn't just a messy file. This feels wrong. I decide to dig a little deeper. My next step is to check state business registrations records. It's public information, you just have to know where to look. I find the registration for Aura Strategies LLC. It was formed less than a year ago. That's another red flag. We're paying a brand new company huge sums of money. Then I look at the name of the registered agent, the person who legally owns the company. The name doesn't ring any bells, but the address listed for the owner is in a very wealthy part of a neighboring state on a whim. I do a search for that name, and I cross-reference it with Helen's name, and that's when I find it a wedding announcement from a few years back. In a High Society magazine's online archive, the owner of Aura Strategies LLC is listed as the maid of honor at the wedding of Helen's younger sister. It's not a direct relative, but it's a very close connection. One that's definitely not disclosed in our vendor files. My heart starts beating a little faster. This is a massive conflict of interest, at the very least, but it still doesn't explain the ghost company and the vague invoices. I feel like I'm pulling on a thread, and I need to see where it leads. I have a feeling the answer isn't in my accounting software. I remember all those magazine interviews Helen has done. She has a very public social media presence. She's always posting photos from galas, charity events, and exotic vacations, always talking about her girl boss lifestyle. I open up her public social media profile. I start with the date of the first payment to Aura Strategies, a $50,000 payment for leadership and brand synergy consultation. I scroll through Helen's feed to that exact week, and there it is, a photo of her at a high-end fashion event. She's wearing a designer dress that I know for a fact costs a fortune in the caption. She talks about the importance of women dressing for success and investing in themselves. My stomach drops. No way it could be a coincidence. I check the next payment date, a $100,000 invoice for an executive outreach and vision alignment. I scroll through her feed again. That same weekend, she posted a series of photos from a wellness retreat in the Caribbean. She flew there on a private jet. The photos are of her on a yacht with a caption about how important it is for female leaders to recharge and avoid burnout. I feel sick. I spend the rest of the night going through every single payment to Aura Strategies. Every single one lines up perfectly with a major luxury purchase or an extravagant trip that Helen posted about online. A $75,000 payment corresponds to her buying a rare, limited edition handbag she showed off at a conference. Another large payment matches a weekend trip to a European city, where she stayed in a ridiculously expensive hotel suite. It's not a coincidence, it's a pattern, a blatant, arrogant pattern of embezzlement. She set up a shell company through a trusted friend or family member. She has the company send bogus invoices to Innovate Forward for consulting services. She, as the CEO, approves the payments, and then the money is funneled right back to her to fund her lavish lifestyle. She's stealing from her own company, the same company she claims to be building into a progressive haven, all the talk about empowering women and fighting the patriarchy. It's a smokescreen. She's using the company's money to buy designer clothes and fly on private jets. I lean back in my chair and just stare at my screen. I have a folder on my desktop with everything, screenshots of the invoices, the company registration, the social media posts with dates, the wedding announcement connecting the names. It's an open and shut case of fraud. I feel a wave of anxiety wash over me. What do I do with this? This isn't just a clerical error. This is a crime committed by the most powerful person in my company. The person who has the power to destroy my career with a single email. My first instinct is to just delete the folder and pretend I never saw anything. Just go back to my boring, safe life. It's not my problem, right? But my brain won't let it go. The numbers don't add up. It's fundamentally wrong, and that bothers the part of me that believes in order and rules. She's not just stealing, she's doing it while standing on a soapbox and lecturing everyone else on morality. The hypocrisy is what really gets to me. I think about all the times we had to sit through her speeches about ethics and transparency, all the mandatory training sessions about corporate responsibility. It was all a lie. I barely sleep that night. I keep going over it in my head. I could go to the board of directors, but they're all her friends. She handpicked them. They would probably just sweep it under the rug and fire me for causing trouble. I could go to the authorities, but that's a huge step. I'd need a lawyer, and I can't afford one, plus it would turn my life into a circus. I decide there's only one correct way to handle this. According to the employee handbook, that Danielle is so fond of quoting, I have to follow the internal protocol. I have to report it through the proper channels. I have to trust the system. So, the next morning, I come into the office looking tired but determined. I spend 2 hours composing the most neutral, professional, fact-based email of my life. I address it to Danielle, the head of HR. The subject line is Inquiry Regarding Vendor Invoices. I don't make any accusations. I don't mention Helen's name. I simply state that during a routine review, I found irregularities concerning payments to a vendor named Aura Strategies LLC. I list the invoice numbers and dates. I point out the lack of a company website or public presence I mention, the conflict of interest regarding the company's ownership. I attach a few key documents, but not the social media stuff. I decide to hold that back for now. I end the email by saying, I believe these findings warrant a further internal review to ensure compliance with company policy. Please let me know how you would like to proceed. It's perfect. It's just an employee doing his due diligence, reporting a potential issue to HR. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm just a good employee. I read it over 10 times, take a deep breath, and hit send for a moment. I feel a sense of relief. I did the right thing, the proper way. Now the ball is in their court. The rest of the day is nerve-wracking every time my email notification dings. My heart jumps, but nothing comes from Danielle. The day ends, and still no reply. I go home feeling uneasy the next day. Same thing. Silence. It's like I threw a rock into a pond and it didn't even make a ripple. I see Danielle in the hallway, and she walks right past me with a polite, cold smile, as if nothing is wrong. I start to doubt myself. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I misinterpreted everything. But then I look at the files again. No, the evidence is clear. They're ignoring me. They're hoping I'll just drop it later that week. I'm getting coffee when Mary comes up to me. She looks even more nervous than usual. She speaks in a very low voice. Jerome, I'm probably not supposed to say anything, but be careful. I ask her what she means. She just shakes her head and scurries back to her desk. That's when I know for sure my email wasn't ignored. It was received. And now they're planning something. I decide I can't let them just bury this. I send a follow-up email to Danielle, very polite, very professional. Hi Danielle, just following up on my previous email regarding Aura Strategies LLC. I wanted to ensure you had received it and see if there are any updates on the internal review. This time, I get a reply within minutes. It's a single sentence. Jerome, your concerns have been noted. The matter is being handled. It's the coldest, most dismissive email I've ever received. It's a clear message. Drop it. Now. But I can't. I feel like I'm in too deep. If I back down now, I'll always be the guy who knew and did nothing. And worse, they'll know that. I know I'll have this hanging over my head forever. I feel trapped. A few more days. Pass in silence, the tension is killing me. I can't focus on my work. I feel like everyone is watching me. Then on a Friday afternoon, I get an email. It's from Danielle's assistant. Meeting invitation, follow-up discussion. It's for Monday morning. The attendees are me, Danielle, and Helen. My blood runs cold. This isn't an internal review. This is an ambush. That weekend was one of the longest of my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything in my head. The email, the silence, Mary's warning, the meeting invitation. It was a slow-motion train wreck, and I was tied to the tracks. I went over my folder of evidence 100 times, making sure everything was solid. The facts were undeniable, but I had a sinking feeling that facts weren't going to matter in that meeting. I thought about just not showing up, just ghosting the job. But that wasn't me. Plus, they'd just fire me anyway and control the narrative. I had to go. I had to face them. Monday morning arrived, cold and gray. I put on my best work clothes, trying to look professional and confident. But I felt like I was walking to my own execution. I walked into the office and the atmosphere felt different. Or maybe it was just me. People seemed to avoid my gaze. I got to the top floor where the executive offices were. The air up there is always different, quieter, more expensive. Danielle's assistant gave me a tight, fake smile and pointed toward the boardroom. They're ready for you, Jerome. I walked in. The room was huge, with a long, polished table and a panoramic view of the city. Helen and Danielle were sitting on one side of the table, perfectly composed. They looked like two judges about to pass. Sentence they didn't get up, Helen just gestured to the single chair on the opposite side of the table. I sat down. The chair felt cold. I put my briefcase on my lap, the one with all my printed-out evidence inside. A long, awkward silence hung in the air. Finally, Helen spoke. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, which was somehow more terrifying than if she had been yelling. She started by saying how much they valued a positive and collaborative work environment at Innovate Forward. She talked about the importance of trust, especially between employees and leadership. It was like listening to a pre-recorded speech. Then her tone shifted slightly. She said that recently it had come to her attention that my behavior was not aligned with the company's core values. I started to open my mouth to say that my email was just about a financial query, but she held up a hand to stop me. She wasn't finished. She went on to say that there had been concerns about my adversarial attitude, that I was creating a chilling effect in the finance department. I had no idea what she was talking about. I barely spoke to anyone outside of work-related matters. Danielle then chimed in, opening a folder in front of her. She had a very serious expression on her face. She explained that my recent actions, specifically my unsolicited and accusatory emails, were being interpreted as an attempt to undermine leadership. She used the phrase, "a pattern of insubordination." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had sent 2 polite professional emails following company protocol. Now they were twisting it into me, being some kind of rogue agent trying to stage a coup. I tried to interject again. I said, "This is about the invoices from Aura Strategies. I have documents showing a clear conflict of interest and financial irregularities. I was just doing my job." I started to reach for my briefcase. Helen let out a small, condescending laugh. She told me this meeting wasn't about invoices. This was about my conduct. She said my decision to obsessively investigate a female-owned vendor was problematic. She suggested it stemmed from an inability to accept female authority. She actually said the words toxic masculinity. My jaw almost hit the floor. They were turning this around completely. They were using their corporate shield of progressive politics to hide a simple case of fraud. They were painting me, the guy who found the fraud. As the villain, Danielle added that my fixation on the CEO's personal life, by which she must have meant my connecting the payments to the social media posts, was a violation of privacy and created an unsafe work environment for Helen. An unsafe work environment for the CEO, who was stealing millions of dollars? The absurdity of it was staggering. I finally just put my hands on the table and looked them both in the eye. I told them I had evidence, clear and simple evidence, that company funds were being misappropriated through a shell company owned by a family friend of Helen's. I said I was trying to protect the company. Helen's smile vanished. Her face became hard as stone. She looked at me with pure contempt. She told me my accusations were baseless, insulting, and slanderous. She said I was a disgruntled employee trying to damage the reputation of a successful woman because I couldn't stand to see her succeed. It was the ultimate reverse card. Every progressive buzzword they had ever preached was now being used as a weapon against me. I was experiencing the corporate version of being canceled, right there in that room. Danielle closed her folder with a sharp, final sound. She announced that based on my disruptive and defamatory behavior, and my refusal to engage constructively, they had no choice. My employment with Innovate Forward was terminated. Effective immediately, I just sat there, stunned into silence. I knew it was coming, but it still felt like a physical blow. Helen stood up. She told me she was deeply disappointed, that she had hoped I would be an ally to the cause of female empowerment, but clearly I was part of the problem. Then she walked out of the room without another glance in my direction. Danielle slid a packet of papers across the table to me. My termination letter and an NDA. She told me if I signed the NDA, they would give me a small severance package. The NDA would legally bar me from ever speaking about what happened at the company, or my reasons for leaving it was hush money. I looked at the paper. Then back at her, I pushed it back across the table. I told her I wasn't signing anything. Her fake professional demeanor finally cracked. She gave me a nasty look and told me I was making a big mistake. She said they would be noting in my file that I was fired for gross misconduct and creating a hostile work environment. She informed me that security was waiting outside to escort me from the building. I didn't say another word. I just picked up my briefcase and walked to the door outside. 2 large security guards were waiting. They didn't say anything, just gestured for me to walk ahead of them. They led me back to the main office floor, back to my desk. The entire office went silent. Everyone stopped typing and just stared. It was the walk of shame. Me, with 2 guards, walking through the rows of cubicles. They gave me a cardboard box and told me I had 5 minutes to gather my personal belongings. My hands were shaking as I packed my mug, a few photos, and a plant I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes on me. Some people looked away, pretending to be busy. Some looked on with a kind of morbid curiosity. I saw Mary. She was looking right at me, her face pale with shock and pity. Our eyes met for a second, and then she quickly looked down at her keyboard like she was afraid of being associated with me. I didn't blame her. She had a job to protect in that moment. I felt completely and utterly alone. The guards walked me to the elevator, rode down with me, and escorted me all the way to the front door of the building. One of them held the door open for me. Then I was outside, standing on the pavement in the middle of a Monday, holding a cardboard box. It was over. I was jobless, disgraced, and powerless. The next few weeks were a blur of depression and anxiety. I tried to file for unemployment, but the company contested it, citing the gross misconduct charge. It was their word against mine. And they were a multi-million-dollar company. My claim was denied. My savings started to dwindle fast. I polished up my resume and started applying for other analyst jobs. I sent out dozens of applications. Most of them got no response. A few sent back, automated rejection emails. I finally got an interview with another tech firm. It went really well. The hiring manager seemed to like me. He said my skills were exactly what they were looking for. He said they just needed to do a final reference check with my previous employer. My heart sank a week later. I got an email from them. After careful consideration, we have decided to move forward with other candidates. I knew exactly what had happened. Danielle had given me a reference. She had poisoned the well. They hadn't just fired me, they had blacklisted me. They had taken my career, the one thing I had built for myself through hard work and diligence, and they had destroyed it. I was becoming desperate. I was running out of money for rent. The feeling of injustice was eating me alive every night. I'd lie awake, thinking about Helen on her private jet, paid for with stolen money. While I was worried about buying groceries, I thought about her smug face as she lectured me on toxic masculinity. I thought about all the employees who had to sit there and listen to her lies. I thought about Mary, too scared to even look at me. The system I had trusted had not only failed me, it had turned on me and crushed me. I had done everything by the book, and this was my reward. One night, I was sitting in my small, dark apartment, staring at my laptop. The only thing I had left from that job was the folder on my desktop, the one with all the proof, evidence_innovate_forward. I had been so naive I had thought that presenting facts to people in power would make them do the right thing. I realized now that they didn't care about facts. They only cared about power. They had all the power, and I had none, or did I? I opened the folder one last time, the invoices, the bank records, the social media posts. It was all still there, a perfect, undeniable story of corruption and hypocrisy. They had taken my job, my reputation, and my future. They had left me with nothing to lose, and a man with nothing to lose is a man. You shouldn't have messed with a cold, calm feeling washed over me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something else. It was resolve. If the official channels wouldn't deliver justice, then I would find another way. I couldn't go to the mainstream media. They loved Helen. They'd probably just bury the story to protect her. I needed to go somewhere that didn't care about protecting the powerful, somewhere that loved to tear down hypocrites. I opened a new browser tab. I went to a notorious online forum, a place known for chaos and unfiltered truth. I created a new, anonymous account. I took all my files and put them into a single, encrypted zip folder. I uploaded it to an anonymous file hosting site. Then I started a new thread. I wrote it in the simple, direct style of the forum, no emotion, just facts. It was the only voice I had left. My post was simple. I didn't write a long sob story. I just laid it out. Green text style, be me. Former financial analyst at a woke tech company. You've probably heard of my ex-CEO, Helen. She's in magazines. Talks about empowering women 24/7, found out she was embezzling millions from the company used a shell corp owned by a relative to fund her luxury lifestyle. Private jets, designer clothes, the works, all while the company froze our salaries citing market conditions, did the right thing. reported it to HR with concrete evidence, got dragged into a meeting with her and the HR head, Danielle. They didn't even look at my evidence instead. They accused me of being a sexist trying to undermine female leadership, fired me for creating a hostile work environment. Security marched me out of the building like a criminal. They blacklisted me, can't find another job. They took everything from me, so I'm giving this to you. Here's the zip file with everything. Invoices, bank transfers, social media, posts with matching dates, company registration docs. Her hypocrisy needs to see the light of day. Do what you do best. I pasted the link to the anonymous file download at the bottom. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my finger hovering over the submit button. This was it. No going back, I clicked it. The thread was live for a few minutes. Nothing happened. I felt a pang of fear, thinking it would just get buried and ignored. Then the first reply came in, pics or it didn't happen. Then another, downloading the files now, this better be good. A few more minutes passed, and then the floodgates opened. The first person to get through the files posted, "Holy, it's all real." The dates on the invoices match her vacation posts perfectly. Suddenly, the thread exploded. People were digging through the documents like digital archaeologists. They were faster and more thorough than I ever could have been alone. Someone found the shell company owner's social media and discovered she was also on that Caribbean trip with Helen. Another user did a deep dive on Innovate Forward's public financials and found other questionable expenses. I had missed they turned it into a game, a collective investigation. They created memes, putting Helen's quotes about smashing the patriarchy next to a receipt for a $20,000 handbag. The thread was moving so fast I could barely keep up. It was the most chaotic, beautiful thing I had ever seen. A hive mind of anonymous strangers all working together to expose a lie. I stayed up all night, just watching it unfold. By the next morning, my little forum post had escaped its containment. Someone had written a summary and posted it on a bigger, more mainstream social news site from there. It caught the attention of a blogger. He wasn't from a major newspaper. He was an independent journalist who specialized in corporate corruption, the kind of guy who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He wrote a long, detailed article, citing my anonymous post and verifying the key pieces of evidence from the zip file. He gave the story the perfect explosive headline: Innovate Forward's feminist CEO accused of embezzlement by whistleblower. She fired for toxic masculinity. That headline was gasoline on a fire. The article went viral. It was shared thousands, then tens of thousands of times. The story was no longer confined to the dark corners of the internet. It was everywhere. I saw it being discussed on major social media. Platforms hashtags started trending. Hashtag fraud, feminist, hashtag InnovateGate. Helen's carefully crafted public image began to crumble. In real time, her most recent posts were flooded with comments from thousands of people demanding answers, calling her a hypocrite and a thief. Mainstream news outlets, the same ones that had put her on their magazine covers, could no longer ignore the story at first. They reported on it cautiously as online allegations. Innovate Forward's PR department issued a statement. It was full of the usual corporate doublespeak. They called the allegations baseless and malicious, a smear campaign orchestrated by a disgruntled former employee. They said they had full confidence in their CEO's leadership and integrity. It was a huge mistake. Their denial just made people angrier. The independent journalist published a follow-up article, fact-checking their statement and showing how it contradicted the evidence in the leaked files. Now the company looked like they were part of the cover-up. The pressure started to mount. A few big-name investors started putting out statements expressing their deep concern. A major client announced they were suspending their partnership with Innovate Forward, pending an investigation. The house of cards was starting to fall. I watched it all from my apartment, like I was watching a movie. It felt surreal. I wasn't Jerome the unemployed analyst anymore. I was the anonymous source, the ghost in the machine who had started it all a week after my post. The board of directors at Innovate Forward announced they were hiring an independent law firm to conduct a full and thorough review of the allegations. It was a clear sign that Helen had lost their support 2 days later. News broke that she had been placed on an indefinite leave of absence. Danielle was also suspended. The story just kept getting bigger. Financial regulators announced they were opening a formal investigation into the company's accounting practices. Paparazzi started camping outside Helen's lavish home. The photos of her were no longer glamorous. She looked stressed, pale, and angry. Caught by a long-lens camera as she was getting into her car, the fall was swift and brutal. A month after my post, the results of the internal investigation were announced. Innovate Forward fired Helen for cause they fired. Danielle for her role in the cover-up. They released a public statement admitting to significant financial misconduct by former leadership and promising to cooperate fully with the authorities. The company I knew was gone, its reputation in tatters. The final nail in the coffin came a few months later. Helen was formally charged with wire fraud and embezzlement. The news showed her doing the perp walk into a courthouse, trying to hide her face from the cameras with a designer coat. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. The woman who built her brand on being a powerful, untouchable girl boss was brought down by a bunch of numbers in a spreadsheet and an anonymous post on the internet. As for me, my life slowly started to get back to normal, with Helen and Danielle gone. And the truth out in the open, my blacklisting was effectively over. I started applying for jobs again this time, when they called for a reference. There was no one there to slander me. I got a job at a smaller, quieter accounting firm. No inspirational posters on the wall. No mandatory social justice seminars. Just people who cared about getting the numbers right. It was perfect one afternoon. I got an email from an unfamiliar address. It was from Mary, my old coworker. She said she was so sorry for what happened to me, and for not speaking up. She said that after I was fired, the atmosphere at the office became even more toxic, and she had quit. A few weeks later, she ended the email by saying, "You were the bravest person in that whole company. You did the right thing." I read her email and felt a sense of peace. I never wanted to be a hero. I never wanted to be a whistleblower. I was just a guy who believed that things should add up. I had been dragged into a fight I didn't ask for, against a system that was designed to protect the powerful and punish the honest. They tried to crush me, to erase me. But in the end, the truth came out not because of some grand moral crusade, but because one person, pushed too far, decided to leak a folder of receipts. I never told anyone. It was me. No one at my new job knows. To them, I'm just Jerome, the quiet guy who's really good with spreadsheets, and I'm okay with that. I didn't get a reward or a parade, but I got something better. I got my life back, and I got to watch justice be served, not in a courtroom drama, but in the chaotic, unfiltered court of public opinion. They thought they had all the power. They were wrong.